For almost 4 decades, Reactor Unit 4 at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in Ukraine remains the worst radioactive fallout disaster in human history. The disaster exposed not only the flaws in the technology itself, but also the undeniable flaws of humankind's interaction with technology and with one another. Technology will only work as well as the human beings in charge of it. So what additional lessons are there in this HBO miniseries? Welcome back to this special edition of the Life Lessons series. Reciting the narrator for the documentary series, Seconds from Disaster, the opening line states, quote, "Disasters don't just happen. They are triggered by a chain of critical events," end quote. Those critical events also include critical decisions. Many of these incidents that we refer to as accidents are not really accidents. Sure, the intent may not have been to break anything, but that does not nullify the recklessness involved. The main problem in these incidents lies within man. The only way to avoid incidents involves us keeping our pride in check, and yet many times over, through circumstantial evidence, this is the last place we look, and we also do everything possible to avoid the accountability that follows. It is that foolishness that is never to be ignored, for it causes severe injury and even death. Speaking of which, let's see how that plays out in episode 2 of the HBO miniseries, Chernobyl. Number 1. Pay attention to those who know what they are talking about. Professor Legasov was finally invited into the commission meeting for a briefing on the current status of the situation at the power plant. However, in listening to the details mentioned by Mr. Sherbina, and how they did not add up to the report of matters in the surrounding area of Unit 4, Professor Legasov interjected. Legasov, having a significant understanding of nuclear fission, radioactivity, and the RBMK reactors themselves, voiced his concerns firmly and with urgency. Mr. Sherbina attempted to silence Legasov, but the former president of the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev, allowed Legasov to express his concerns. Gorbachev then assigned Mr. Sherbina to personally examine Unit 4 and to take Professor Legasov with him. Sherbina respectfully objected to having Professor Legasov accompany him, to which Gorbachev questioned Sherbina's competency of nuclear reactors, with Sherbina's response being that he is unaware. That finalized the necessity for Legasov to be included. Beware of human beings in your surroundings that want to take leadership of operations but do not understand nor respect the basic and critical technical details. Avoid people of this mindset as much as possible, as anything you try to tell them that contradicts the direction they want to go, no matter how truthful it is, it tends to go through one ear and out the other. If you are behaving in this mindset, knock it off. You are making yourself look like an idiot, and you're putting yourself and others in a bad position that can be severely harmful and in some cases fatal. If you appoint a professional to help you with a matter, they are not there to stroke your ego. They are there to fix the problem by whatever warranted requisites. Deal with a problem as it is, not how you want it to be defined. Leave all that bullcrap of yours at the door. Management officials, technical remedies cannot be dictated by the money you want to invest. It costs what it costs. Either you invest in the necessary maintenance the technology requires, or it will schedule it for you, and it will always be at the worst possible time. Furthermore, when you only approve budgets for cheap investments in equipment you claim is critical to your operations, your arguments about the negative outcomes that follow have very limited merit. Get over the financial costs and figure it out, and do what needs to be done. Invest in quality products. If you are not sure what those quality products are, pay attention to those who do. A word to fellow technicians as well. Our group is not in the clear on this matter either. Some of us have a bad reputation and bad habits of being set in our ways and refusing to learn and grow. Some of us even refuse to take into consideration better ideas. The technical remedy is whatever needs to happen to yield the most efficient result. If what you've been doing or using for the past 20, 30, 40 years is no longer efficient, stop holding yourselves and others back. Get over it and move on. Legasov's tone was very serious and stern. Well, guess what? A serious, stern tone is for a reason. And oftentimes, the competent and wise resort to that kind of tone when the recipients involved are being hard-headed and refusing to take concerns seriously. And that is ridiculously frustrating. Nature, which includes all forms of life, humans as well, do not owe anyone getting their way. Getting your way in selfishness comes with a cost you have no control of dictating. So if you want to get your way so badly, do it by yourself. You do not need any help digging your own hole of foolishness and dysfunction. Speaking of foolishness, that transitions to the next lesson. Number 2, unmanaged pride and ignorance are recipes for disaster. In the following scenes, Mr. Sherbina and Professor Legasov were on their way to check on Unit 4 via helicopter. Sherbina asked Legasov how a nuclear reactor works, along with a mild threat to have him thrown out of the helicopter should he refuse to explain. Legasov answered the question with as basic details as possible, to which afterwards, Mr. Sherbina obnoxiously disregarded the necessity for Legasov's presence any further. This particular issue is something that happens quite often in modern society. When those in charge are egotistical, they will seek the absolute bare minimum of details on something they're in charge of and go full throttle on those details alone. What's worse, they fail to include key personnel related to the operation to gain their insights. This results in problems going unaddressed and manifesting later on, blindsiding those directly involved and those who neglected to include the competent in conversation. Refraining from learning all of the factors about an issue is a decision, and it's one hell of a foolish one. If you are doing this, I suggest you correct this behavior immediately before you make yourself look like an even bigger dumbass than you already displayed. Failure to correct this will get yourself either humiliated, it'll get you hurt, and in some cases, it could even get you killed. If you choose to remain in such reckless and foolish behavior, you have earned yourself a confirmed date with accountability. And before you argue how mean this sounds, understand this: stupidity and foolishness are not to be rewarded. No human being nor nature owes you any kind of tolerance in the midst of your own foolishness. So if you want to gain some sympathy, humble yourself. So the best option for you to earn sympathy and to earn help, humble yourself. Humble yourself first. Then you can have a conversation with the competent and the wise. A notice to the competent and the wise as well. We got to keep our own attitudes in check. Do not belittle folks when they ask for help. Moving on to the next series of interactions in the helicopter flight. As they were getting closer to the reactor building, Legasov was horrified at the sighting. An argument materialized between Sherbina and Legasov, to which Sherbina questioned how Legasov was able to determine so well the circumstances of the reactor without seeing things directly, and then ordered the pilot to fly directly over the building. Legasov alarmingly warned Sherbina that if they do that, they'll be dead within a week. Sherbina persisted, even threatening the pilot to continue, otherwise face execution. Legasov pleaded with the pilot that if he did continue, by tomorrow morning he would be begging for the execution. Making up his mind, the pilot chose to fly away from the building. In this portion of the scene, it is clear that Mr. Sherbina is not aware of what ionizing radiation from nuclear fuel does to the human body, or even other life for that matter. Through his own ignorance and blatant negligence to tame his pride, he was leading himself and 4 other passengers into serious danger. This kind of behavior is unacceptable and inexcusable. Some of us in humankind do this to this very day. We are so hard-headed that we will pick a fight with scenarios we have no control over, falsely believing we have some kind of superpower to control the outcomes or consequences, only to find out we never were in control. Nature is one existence you better not pick a fight with. So a serious question: do you still think ignorance is bliss? And even if it is, at what cost? What are you willing to sacrifice to maintain that, quote, blissful ignorance, close quote? Are your health and safety part of the currency options? Number 3, do not wait until a problem you have been warned of materializes to take the appropriate actions. Ulana Komyuk, a nuclear physicist and fictional character in this miniseries, representing the many scientists who aided Professor Legasov, tried to alert the deputy secretary at the Belarusian Communist Party HQ in Minsk about Chernobyl. However, Ms. Komyuk was met with the deputy secretary's negative opinion of scientists. Quote, "When we have a disease to cure, where are they? In a lab, noses in their books, and so grandma dies. But when there isn't a problem, they're everywhere spreading fear." End quote. The deputy secretary dismissed every attempt by Ms. Komyuk to warn him. And saying what she needed to, Ms. Komyuk left his office. It is recklessness like this that boils the blood of the competent and the wise. What the deputy secretary did further proves the previous lesson to pay attention to those who know what they are talking about. While we may have an opinion about a group of people, those opinions do not override truth. Those who choose to remain in ignorance with clear signs of red flags will eventually come to regret it. This does not have to be you. So if you are given a red flag, pay attention and investigate it carefully and safely. No one else is to blame but yourself when you choose not to act appropriately. That is a decision. With the deputy secretary's argument, his intent to blame solely the scientists about grandma's condition is actually questionable. How are scientists supposed to act swiftly of a disease when they are given very little information and support about the condition? How many times have you witnessed people, even in your own cases, a problem was brewing, no action was taken, and only when the problem reached the critical stage, which oftentimes is beyond your threshold of tolerance, that you sought after help? The bottom line, when there is a problem, make sure you are not contributing to that problem, which includes yourself failing to communicate any abnormalities in the earlier stages of its manifestation. For some of you, the reason why you don't like scientists or others engaged in technical practices, it's because their vigilance reminds you how reckless you behave. Knock it off and grow up. Furthermore, Ms. Komyuk was not trying to spread fear. What she was doing, and what any moral and responsible human being tries to do when they know something is wrong, they inform of the issue and they propose solutions if they are able. The problem is the recipients of selfish mindsets refuse to accept the actual remedy. That does not stop reality. Reality does not owe us the outcome we want. When you invest in reckless decisions, you will get the corresponding results, consequences. Plain and simple. Neither your traumatic history nor your feelings are ever an excuse to pardon you from accountability. When you know better, do better. Number 4, when in disagreement, focus on facts, not personal views. Upon returning from the helicopter flight, Chernobyl and Legasov met with the top power station operatives Viktor Brekharnov and Nikolai Fomin. Brekharnov and Fomin sternly challenged Professor Legasov's concern that the core at Unit 4 exploded and called his statements disgraceful since he was not prepared to explain it at the time. Chernobyl chimed in asking why he saw graphite on the roof, using the recent knowledge he gained from Legasov's explanation to how a nuclear reactor works. Brekharnov and Fomin responded with nothing more than excuses. In order to prove who was right, a high-range radiation dosimeter was used to take readings as close to the core as possible. The number reported upon return was not 3.6 Röntgen, like originally reported. It was 15,000. That's roughly 5,000 times the original number reported. Chernobyl requested clarification from Legasov on what that number means. Legasov confirmed the number indicates the core is open and emitting life-threatening amounts of radiation every single hour. Just minutes, if not seconds, of exposure to that amount is fatal. One of the biggest issues with humankind is our obsession with our own personal views and, in growing cases, our feelings. Yes, you heard that correctly. Humankind has a very bad tendency to value and credit our personal views and feelings over truth and reality. There are some of us that we just want to be right, even when it's absolutely apparent that we're wrong. While personal views and feelings have significance, they do not override fact and reality. What's worse, there are a number of these individuals who treat their personal views and feelings as if they are their very lifeline for existence. They will attempt to silence anyone who dares to speak against their perceptions, no matter if it's in a respectful manner or a disrespectful manner. Any opposition to their agenda will be met with demonization and even health and life-threatening retaliation in some cases. Even so, no matter how many are silenced or demonized, the truth and facts are still there, completely unfazed. Therefore, the efforts invested to silence those who know the truth and are willing to speak the truth is nothing more than a postponement. One day, the truth and reality will make themselves known, and they have plenty to choose from to make such announcements. This leads to the next lesson, which is a solid word of advice when we mess up. Number 5, announce your faults that affect others before they find out. Professor Legasov was still very concerned for the citizens of Chernobyl and Pripyat, the neighboring city. They still were not given any order to evacuate. In fact, no one was allowed to leave the city borders, therefore remaining in the midst of ionizing radiation. Chernobyl then received a phone call. A power plant in Sweden had detected radiation and identified it as a byproduct of the Soviets' nuclear fuel. Satellite photos were taken, and multiple news outlets across the world were in conversation about Chernobyl. With this incident now in the wind across the world, the lid of secrecy was wide open. After this, large numbers of buses were launched to evacuate the citizens. Gorbachev was upset by this event and even asked the commission if they understood the damage this disaster had done and if they understood what was at stake. It is understandable that our natural survival reaction is to preserve our credibility as much as we can. However, we go about this by trying to completely hide our mistakes that negatively impact others, and that's taking it too far. We actually destroy more of our credibility when we try to keep our actions that negatively impact others on the down low, especially without any behavioral correction. Additionally, we end up wasting a lot of resources trying to keep those issues silent, including our peace and our sanity. Your best option, if you want to maintain any trust you have with someone when you mess up and it affects them, is to tell them about it first. Will there be some people upset? Yes. But there is a much better chance of maintaining some of their trust that way versus them finding out from other sources. Telling them your faults first establishes that you have a sense of care and respect toward them. To tell them nothing indicates there is no level of respect for them. Our reckless actions are driven by ego. While it can be challenging at times to keep it under control, it's not impossible. The only factor that makes it difficult is our unrealistic desires to be vindicated from all accountability. The more we embrace accountability, the better we will be. We are going to make mistakes, and even unwise, reckless decisions at times. We are human and we will fail. The key factor is, are we learning from these incidents? Are we improving? Applying the lessons from our faults can give them a more positive meaning, especially when we share those experiences with others to help them make better decisions. If you want to heal from the pain of your mistakes, apply the lessons from them and teach others how to avoid repeating them. Keep your ego in check and pay attention to the red flags. When there is a problem, deal with it early and properly. Do not ignore it, no matter how small it is. Deal with it as it is, not how you want it to be defined. And finally, if you don't know something, it is okay to ask. Learn all the details about it so you can make the best decision to keep you and others safe. That'll complete this installment of the series, and I invite you to stay tuned for the next one. Are there lessons you learned in this episode of Chernobyl? By all means, please share them in the comments. If you enjoyed this video and haven't done so already, please leave a like and maybe also subscribe to the channel. Also be sure to activate notifications to be informed of the next video. Life is full of lessons. Although we might not be perfect, we are capable of improvement. So until next time, stay wise and stay committed to personal development.